The Star Wars community on YouTube really started from lore channels. Of course, there was other interest in other stuff in the community, but at least from the beginning, lore was the backbone. Lore in Star Wars existed from, well, the beginning, when kids on the playground used to say, "That pilot's name is Wedge," and the other kid was like, actually, his name is Biggs. There's quite a few people doing the lore scene for a while, but it didn't really explode until the 2014, 2015, 2016. Those years, at least from my perspective, was really the restart of Star Wars. Like it or not, but when Disney bought Star Wars, they really saved it from what it could. And it could have been without Disney gone down a very much darker path. Of course, we got Clone Wars before then, but instead of getting Star Wars detours, we got Mandalorian, Rebels, Resistance, not to mention the 5 movies, plus the future shows, plus the reset of canon. Most people don't have time to read all the books, junior novels, young adult books, plus all the comics. So the necessity of a lore channel grew. But now at this point, lore channels are branched off into 3 ways: legends, canon, and whatever. But to me now, it's almost impossible to grow a lore channel. And the first problem starts off with what I mentioned before. The necessity of a lore channel is gone. There's no supply and very low demand. What I mean by that is there are layers to making a lore video. For me, at least, the process starts at who do I do? That's already the first and main problem. For me doing main characters, and also to an extent B tier characters, aren't really being looked up because you already know how their story starts in the beginning. You're never going to really look up Darth Vader. You already know what Darth Vader's story is. Of course, there's a little minutia in there, but you already get the grasp of what he does in his story arc. So you have to go to lower B or mainly C tier characters, and that introduces 2 new problems. Most people have already done the lower B tier to C tier characters, and if you continue to do that, that'll lead to oversaturation of characters. There are different ways of doing lore channel for these videos, but at the point, it's just basically going over their story, or basically doing the Watch Mojo 10 things you did not know about this character, which is a not very interesting type of video to make. And these characters have also been covered extensively. And the characters that haven't been really covered extensively, it's for a good reason. Most people doing lore get all their information from Wikipedia, and since Wiki is a public domain, some characters are not going to be covered very well because of how many are out there. If you look at the top of Wikipedia, there's this little short description of a character and what they've been through, and most people will take that and use a video. But if we could look at characters like Prince Caesar or Cal Katarn, it's not done well enough to make a full-length video out of it, and it's not worth the time to take all the parts of the story and make it into one convincing video. It's not worth the time or the effort. After you get to that, there's not really much you can do. Personally, I think Star Force 1 is going to be the last guy who will pass 100,000 subscribers just doing lore. And I'll tell you why in a minute. I personally hit the crossroads of running out of ideas, and lore, after a while, it just gets boring. There's only so much to care about a character that doesn't really exist. I find more talking about Star Wars in general more interesting than talking about each character and what they've been through, because you could easily do that by just looking up the character on Wikipedia. The videos with the most views from the general audience come from The Mandalorian. That's why you see people doing videos on different characters in The Mandalorian. But that also comes with a caveat. That only happens maybe 2 times every single year. And also, after you do the initial characters, you're not going to look up Grogu's story because you already know what happens to Grogu. So most people at this situation will do one of 3 things: quit, change up, or clickbait. And by what I mean at change up, I mean they will do something what I kind of did, where I'll keep posting something Star Wars related, but mostly you would see them switch over to doing theories or what ifs. Oh boy, do I have a lot to say about this topic. Basically, to keep it short, in my opinion, theories can easily be turned into clickbait, which we'll get to later, but also theories can change up your mindset of the viewer on something. Prime example is Snoke. People started making a living making theories about who Snoke is, and with so many people having this expectation that Snoke is going to be the big bad of the trilogy, and that he's going to be a character brought back. He's going to be Mace Windu or Jar Jar or one of Palpatine's advisors, or Palpatine himself, which came true. That's why that joke around episode 9 that was written by Reddit, because a lot of these theories do come from Reddit, such as the Darth Jar Jar theory. But in all actuality, Snoke was never the big bad of the trilogy. It was always Kylo, and that's why people got mad at Rian Johnson, because people thought that they drastically subverted expectations, even though the expectation to begin with was that Kylo was the big bad and that Snoke was really no one.
I love reading the fan theories, you know, having been a Star Wars fan myself and been on the other side of the curtain most of my life. It's pretty cool to be back behind, like peeking through, seeing like, what are people guessing?
And on to what ifs. Not to sound super disrespectful, but what ifs are a concept that has been done to death, and now it is a very dry subject to do. It makes sense since we've been theorizing what would happen with Star Wars since we were young, playing with Lego or action figures. What would happen if Anakin never fell to the dark side? What would happen if Palpatine was found out earlier? And what if Obi-Wan took death sticks?
You wanna buy some death sticks?
Yes.
Anyway, most of it revolves around the prequels, and that is because most changes happen in the prequels, but we see very, very low what ifs around the OT or even the CT. But all this trickles down to the biggest epidemic on the online space: clickbaiting. I mentioned that Star Force 1 will probably be the last person to hit the 100,000 mark just doing lore. He's the last person. He's the perfect example of having a subjectively kind of clickbait channel, but also being honest. What he does is very outlandish legends of stories, because Lord knows a lot of dumb stuff happens in legends, like Luke Skywalker falling in love with a computer. And SF1 is taking one key detail and making it the title. Content on the YouTube Star Wars side. And what's funny about this clone right here is that he made an entire video calling out Stupendous Wade for his fake and shady giveaways, which, if we're being honest, he should be flagged and not be on the platform right now. I can only go so far by saying you should not subscribe to these people who do clickbait, but if you are subscribed, I urge you not to, because it sends a bad culture out there for people like Star Wars Comic or not to get role model to the community. It's perfectly okay to take inspiration from your favorite creators, because that's how art works. Every art piece is just spin off of how you perceive other forms of art. And that just keeps on going and going and going. That's how culture is formed. But just straight up copying people is not okay. I would also like to mention, always keep an open mind when watching videos. People who share a difference of opinion from the majority usually don't do so well. And last of all, and most important of all, I urge you to go watch Star Wars Resistance.
No, I beg you to.